Didn't see you there. Well, you've watched enough videos of me, so now it's time for an interview with my mother.
Hello, my name is Jeannie Marshall. I am Claire Marshall's mother, and I accompanied her to Boston and to Dr. Markos' clinic for her scoliosis treatments.
Why don't we start with any previous knowledge you had of scoliosis going into the whole adventure? What course of action would you have expected to take upon learning that I had scoliosis?
I did not have any previous knowledge of scoliosis other than the typical scoliosis test I took when I was a child. So when I found out you had scoliosis, I did some research and got some good advice from doctors as far as actually what scoliosis is and how to treat it. So my expectations were that, knowing people who had braces, that you would get a brace that would stop the curvature and correct the curvature while you were still growing. So when we went down that traditional path in getting the brace, the Boston brace, when you and I went to the appointment and you were fitted for it, we asked the doctor, not the doctor, but the clinician, what exactly are the expectations of the Boston brace? And he said that the expectations are that that brace just holds you where you are and will stop the curvature at where it's at. I asked a little bit more for more information and found out that there was going to be no overcorrecting of the curves that were already there. So that's how we started out.
All right. This is kind of extreme, as for my case, but what are your thoughts on surgery? Did we think that was a potential option? What did we learn about that?
So what I learned was that if a patient can get their curves under 20 degrees by bone maturity, that there's a better chance of living a life with less pain or with less complications of scoliosis. So knowing your curves were greater than that, we did know that surgery was a possibility, but it was not something we wanted to do as a first option. We knew it was there for some severe cases. Yours wasn't as severe, so we were hoping that wasn't an option. But in order to follow the traditional path of scoliosis care, one does see an orthopedic surgeon. So I kept that in the back of my mind when we went to your first doctor's appointment, knowing that the end result of their care is surgery. Not that every doctor falls back on that, but that is certainly what's in the back of their mind because that is their expertise and that's what they do. And our goal, your dad and I, our goal was to minimize that risk if at all possible and avoid surgery.
Dr. Markos, how did we discover him and how did you know that he was the right choice?
So before going to the initial Boston brace fitting, in the middle of research, I learned that there were many different styles of braces out there. And your grandmother had also done some research. And so both of us had found this 3D scoliosis, Dr. Markos' clinic, but I didn't really look into it any further until after we were told, that the Boston brace was only going to stop your curve and not overcorrect it. So then I became more interested, I did more research, and what impressed me the most was when I called the office, the information that was given to me was so vast, but it was also gentle. It wasn't, our way's the only way. It was simply, here's what we have to offer. This is our research. They sent me more information. They sent me Xrays of past patients. And then Dr. Markos called me personally and talked about kind of what were the next steps that would be taken should we choose to go this route. So again, your dad and I took all of this research and took all the information, and we also looked into some of the other braces, but none of them had quite the research that the brace you have, had. The brace you have is one of the most common ones in Europe, so we felt good about that research, being viable information. So that kind of led us then to, or I should say, knowing the research And then also having that personal contact with Dr. Markos' office gave us the confidence that this is what we should do for the next steps. And the main reason was that if we wanted to get your curves under 20 degrees before bone maturity, this was our best bet, to have some kind of brace that overcorrects instead of just holds you in place. And we knew that bone maturity was coming sooner than later because you were on the older end of being diagnosed with scoliosis and entering into treatment. So we wanted to do something more drastic than the wait and see method.
So you went to Boston with me, and my little brother went too as well. What did the week look like for you two? Since I was in physical therapy most of the day and learning my exercises.
It actually was a very enjoyable week. The office was very good at understanding when patients come from out of town, they come with other people. And so they had a notebook there of things to do in the area when we had time. So sometimes you would be doing something that didn't require my presence, and so your brother and I would go, off and do something. But really, what I remember is most days looked like you doing physical therapy and learning things, and I had to be there because for some cases it involved me actually stretching and pushing and pulling you. And then in other cases just kind of making notes or writing down things. And they also wanted me there because they wanted a parent in the room, of course for liability, but also for kind of watching how you were to go through the exercises so I could be an extra pair of eyes, when watching you. So I remember a lot of being in the office, which was fine and wonderful. Your brother was very patient. He had brought homework from his teacher, so he did homework and hung out with the woman in the front office who was most helpful and entertaining to him. And what I remember is you having times where maybe 2 or 3 hours of something and then a 3-hour break, and then a couple of hours and then a 3-hour break. So it never seemed like we were there all day or any of the information was too intensive in too much time. We had nice breaks. So personally, I felt like I had a really great vacation with you and your brother exploring Boston in the fall. So I remember having a really good time, but I wasn't the one with the new brace and learning new exercises either.
You obviously communicated with Dr. Markos before choosing that path, and you were also there like that week in Boston, and of course we've kept in contact since. How much did you feel information was shared with you over like that week and beyond, like the past 3 years after?
I felt very informed and very in the loop. The entire office staff is very communicative, maybe less so as time goes on, but that's also up to me as well. Meaning that anytime I've asked a question, anytime something comes up, any little tiny thing, there's always tons of communication back and forth, or reference to articles or reference to your book or that kind of thing. The other part of that too is because you were older going into this treatment, and you're also a very responsible young woman, and not only are you a responsible young woman, but you also are very good at taking care of yourself and your body. Therefore, it wasn't something that I had to nag you about or to remind you to do. So I oftentimes didn't have questions because you were taking care of everything. But that being said, I felt communication was fantastic.
So what was your and kind of the whole family, our involvement after returning home from Boston and getting all of our information and my brace and everything?
Some of it was just, I'll say lifestyle changes, but most of it affected you. We did have to, think of things like, where will she do her exercises? And do we have a chair? Do we have a stool? So there were a few logistic things like that to make sure that you had everything you needed. We actually already owned a massage table, which was helpful because there were part of what we had to do were called mobilizations. And that is where you had to lay in certain positions, and then I was an extra pair of hands on your body, twisting and pulling, and at times pinching. I did not love that part. But there were certain manipulations that we needed to do to try to stretch out the hip and the one part of your back that was more concave, I think, than the other side. but there really were not any major lifestyle changes as far as the family was concerned. I think the biggest thing was just trying to remember to do those darn mobilizations. You were pretty good about doing your exercises on your own, but we would say, remember to do mobilizations tonight, and then it would be the next day. So for us, that was the hardest part. Mm-hmm. Yeah. As far as the X-rays go, Dr. Marko believed, and I was grateful for this because I also read the research, that extensive number of X-rays in young people, especially young girls, especially of the the abdomen area, are not. It's not a good thing to have too many, and he believed that as well. And so I appreciated that because you did need quite a few X-rays to get everything going, but then he never did X-rays more than 6 months or a year, depending on that. And he was also very good about letting us find somebody here who would do the X-rays. At times it was the orthopedic surgeon because you were still under his care. And kind of on that note, when we decided to go with an alternative brace, and I called the orthopedic surgeon to say this, he was in full support of it, and he just said, make sure it's a rigid brace, because I guess there are some soft braces out there that I saw as well. But he goes, don't do a soft brace, just do a rigid brace. So just as a side note, it was nice to have that support. But for your first year of treatment, the X-rays came from his office because he was still following up, with you as well. What I really appreciated with Dr. Marko is no matter where we got the X-rays taken, when we sent them all to him, he would put an X-ray of your back in chronological order. He would take all the X-rays and put them there and then show all the same, or not all the same, but the same measurements for each of the curves and showing how they had changed. And so to see that was amazing. It really felt like we've done the right thing, we made the right choice, and you obviously, your dedication to it was really paying off and showing as you were, starting to reach bone maturity.
All right, that is actually the last question I have. So any last words? Any last thoughts about anything we've talked about? Anything you're dying to share with all your fans?
Well, it's an interesting condition because scoliosis is not an issue of mortality. So when knowing my daughter was diagnosed with scoliosis, it wasn't that. But it definitely was something that we wanted to address immediately. We could tell early on that your body awareness as a dancer and a singer is very important to you, and you have good body awareness. And we just wanted to give you your best chance at having a straight back. And that can't happen, but to give you the very best chance. And I personally feel that if I had to do everything all over again, I wouldn't do anything different. I would go to Dr. Marko, I would get the brace, which I'm not going to say out loud because I can never pronounce it, but I would get that overcorrecting brace again, and I would recommend it to anyone because it really does work. And it wasn't just the brace that made our decision. It was the overall lifestyle that we appreciated that came with the program. I don't remember all the names, but I think they're called ADLs. The ADLs, which hand you should raise your hand, in class that will go into the curve. They taught you how to breathe in the curve and how to pull a suitcase or how to wear a backpack or things that you will remember all of your life. And again, to have a healthy back as someone who is not a teenager anymore, to have a healthy back is so important, and it is such a gift. So I think the entire package that came with their program are things that I'm really grateful whether you had scoliosis or not.
All right. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Good times.